out here. Uh-oh, Richard. Oh, wow.
Don't forget to like this video if you like it. Click subscribe, click notifications for future contents, and don't forget to share it with a friend.
Greetings, family. This is Mike Allen here, Digging in the Word. I'm truly excited today to be before you in this camera once again, as we are doing an exclusive episode today. Actually, this will be my first reaction video. I've never done a reaction video before, and I'm excited. What better than the Will Smith apology that was given a few days ago, published on ABC online. And what I want to do is I want to critique the video, the reaction video, from a biblical perspective. And there have been a number of content creators who have weighed in and given their opinion and chimed in on what they think about his apology, whether if it was authentic or not. And so what I want to do today is I want to go in a different direction. I want to give a biblical analysis, which is what I normally do here on this channel, Digging in the Word. We want to dig into God's Word today, and we want to see whether if his apology was authentic according to a biblical standard. And so what we're going to do is we're going to examine the video. The video is not that long. It's a little over 5 minutes. It's 3 questions that he is asked and he answers in the video. So I'm going to take it right from the first question, and we're going to give our analysis on each point. With that said, buckle your seatbelt, enjoy the ride, and let's get into this. All right. Well, the first question here, I'm going to let the cameras roll, and we're going to watch together, and then I'll come in right after.
Why didn't you apologize to Chris in your acceptance speech? I was fogged out by that point. It's all fuzzy. I've reached out to Chris, and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. So I will say to you,
okay, here we go.
Chris, I apologize to you. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. I want to apologize to Chris's mother. I saw an interview that Chris's mother did, and that was one of the things about that moment. I just didn't realize, and I wasn't thinking, but how many people got hurt in that moment. So I want to apologize to Chris's mother. I want to apologize to Chris's family, specifically Tony Rock. We had a great relationship. Tony Rock was my man, and this is probably irreparable. I spent the last 3 months replaying and understanding the nuances and the complexities of what happened in that moment. And I'm not going to try to unpack all of that right now, but I can say to all of you, there is no part of me that thinks that was the right way to behave in that moment. There's no part of me that thinks that's the optimal way to handle a feeling of disrespect or insults.
Okay, so that's the first questions, ladies and gentlemen. A number of critics have said, once again, that Will's apology 3 months later, after his infamous slap of Chris Rock, took too long for him to give. Some have even said that it sounded sincere, and others have even taken issue with his apologizing to Jada and stating that she did nothing to cause him to do what he did, given all of the heat he's been taking from Jada over the past few years or months or so. Well, my question to that would be simply, how do many of you, or as people, know or can recall in your lifetime where you may have apologized or may not have apologized to someone, not even to God, for something that you may have said or you have done, and it took you maybe a year or 3 years or 10 years for that matter to actually come to terms, and not only come to terms but actually muster up all that is within you to go and apologize. Now, not to make any excuses for Will, but I want to explore today what does the Bible, as I said, actually say in regards to how an apology must be made and why it is important for us to do so. How soon after the offense should it be made, and what should it entail? Well, to answer these questions, I took a passage and just 2 verses, Matthew, the book of St. Matthew, the 5th chapter, and we're going to just read the 23rd and the 24th verse, and I'll be reading from the English Standard Version. And it reads as this. It says, "So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come offer your gift." Now, this passage is a passage that is taken from Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount, where he taught principles for those who were coming into this new kingdom of called out ones that he established on the earth in his earthly ministry 2,000 years ago. And what he wanted to teach them was how they ought to live. How should they live in this kingdom? What was considered right, righteous living in this new kingdom that has been established, extending here into the earth in this new covenant that he was ushering in. And so, right off the bat, he talks about in the first verse, the 23rd verse, that when you are going to offer your gifts at the altar, and to offer gifts in Jesus's day were sacrifices that individuals made. These were sacrifices and prayers made to God. These were even acts of worship towards God. And so Jesus says, now while they're offering your gift, he said, there you remember that your brother has something against you. He says, this word remember in the Greek that Jesus uses, it is to remember for good. It is, and to care for. It is properly to recall, to remind oneself actively out of their own will and volition, purposefully and intentionally. It is not offhandedly or merely incidentally. This is not something that just happened haphazardly. This is something that the person intentionally thinks about in this moment. So while you're there at the altar, he says, and you remember intentionally, actively, out of your own will, that there's someone that you have offended, like your brother, shall remember is as an intentional act of the will. And so whatever point Will remembered or realized what he did, it was incumbent upon him, based on principle that Jesus is talking about. It was incumbent upon him to go and to get this thing right, ask for forgiveness, and seek reconciliation with his brother. This is why, according to this passage, Jesus communicated that reconciling our differences, in other words, is more important than to even offer prayers and worship to God, the Most High God of the universe. So how important then is making an apology before, say, the Academy Awards, when it was time for him to come up and get his acceptance speech and in front of millions of people viewing all over the world? How important was it? Could this be why many feel that a public apology 3 months later is a bit too late? In other words, if Jesus taught that reconciling is more important than praying and worshiping God, then what else is there can be more important or of more significance than getting things right with your brother or your sister? What reason is there to think that seeking forgiveness is not significant enough, or is something that can just be put off to do later on the shelf? What accolade, what prize, what award, what achievement is there that is greater or of greater importance than communicating with the God who made heavens and earth? So most definitely seeking reconciliation should be of the highest priority, I'd say, when we've offended someone else. Will said at that night that he was foggy and everything felt fuzzy. In other words, he sounded as if he himself was in shock at what he did that night. However, he did say that he made attempts to apologize afterwards, but it just wasn't time for Chris. Chris wasn't ready. Then 3 months later, Will makes his public apology a few days ago for the very first time. And some have said that he should have at least apologized publicly immediately after to those who were participants of the academy and to the public at large, because his offense was public and offended many. However, Will also said that he apologized to Chris's mom, to Chris's brother and family, and those he stole their moment that night, to include Questlove. He said this the other night. I don't know whether if he reached out to them 3 months ago when this all took place and went down. But one thing for sure that we can learn from this, ladies and gentlemen, my Bible diggers, is that timing is everything. It is so important that we don't put off for tomorrow what we should do today. The second question, we're going to go right back into his apology, and here we go.
After Jada rolled her eyes, did she tell you to do something? No. It's like, I made a choice on my own, from my own experiences, from my history with Chris. Jada had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry, babe. I'm going to say sorry to my kids and my family for the heat that I brought on all of us. To all my fellow nominees, this is a community. It's like I won because you voted for me. And it really breaks my heart to have stolen and tarnished your moment. I can still see Questlove's eyes. It happened on Questlove's award, and it's like I'm sorry really isn't sufficient.
Okay, so this is the second question. Well, Will said to that one, no, straight out, no. It was based on his personal experiences and his history with Chris, he said. Jada had nothing to do with it. Then he apologized to Jada in his statement when he said, sorry, babe, and then to his kids, and then to his family. Now, here's what I say to this family. The best apology given never consists, hear what I'm saying, it never consists of deflecting the guilt off onto someone or something else. Meaning, an authentic apology should consist of not throwing someone else under the bus in order to shield off or absolve oneself from taking total blame for their own actions. Their actions is not the other person's or the next person's actions. In the hood, it is often called dry snitching. An example of this would be deflecting the guilt would be like saying my dog ate my homework, which is the reason why I didn't get to do it. Or the devil made me do it, so I did it. Or better yet, a biblical example of this would be Adam, when God calls him into account after he disobeyed and he ate of the fruit of the tree that he told him not to. And when he confronts Adam, he asks, why did he disobey him by eating the fruit? And then Adam in turn says, Lord, the woman whom you gave me, she gave me and the tree of the tree, and I ate. Nevertheless, the proper response to being guilty, folks, is once again in what Jesus said in Matthew 5, that you, while at the altar, and there remember, the moment you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go, he says. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Then come and receive your accolades. Then come and worship God. Then come any and everything else that matters. But the first priority is to go and get things right with your brother or your sister. Notice how the beef your brother has with you is about you. How what you remember, what you did to him should take precedence over even worshiping God Almighty himself. In other words, what else at this moment or that particular moment is greater than your sin against your brother? So in Will's case, should that be Jada and all the humiliation she's put him through over the past few years, his career, his children? What would his offended brother Chris would want to hear that is greater than what Will did to humiliate him that night publicly in front of millions of people? Not to mention Chris's own family was watching that night. And to be humiliated as such, would he want Will to put Will's accolade before apologizing? Would he want Will to put Jada or his career or his children? No. The thing that mattered to Chris at that moment and at that time in the midst of his hurt, in the midst of his shame and his pain, that Will could do something like this. Mind you, Will said they had history. So someone you had history with can literally publicly humiliate you when you were just doing your job. The point of the matter is that Will acted in response. He over exaggerated. He over responded and reacted in a way that didn't match what Chris did at that moment. However, the Bible teaches that you should confess your faults, not the faults of others, as to why you did what you did. Don't deflect it off to others. So in this regard, kudos to Will for at least taking all of the blame on the chin and not deflecting what he did on Jada or anyone else or anything else that he may have been going through that night. Here goes the third question. Let's get right back into it.
What would you say to the people who looked up to you before the slap, or people who expressed that you let them down? So there's two things. One, disappointing people is my central trauma. I hate when I let people down. So it hurts. It hurts me psychologically and emotionally to know I didn't live up to people's image and impression of me. And the work I'm trying to do is I am deeply remorseful, and I'm trying to be remorseful without being ashamed of myself, right? I'm human, and I made a mistake, and I'm trying not to think of myself as a piece of shit. So I would say to those people, I know it was confusing. I know it was shocking. But I promise you, I am deeply devoted and committed to putting light and love and joy into the world. And, you know, if you hang on, I promise we'll be able to be friends again.
Okay, so in this final question here, I think this is a very good question. Very all of these questions were actually good, in my opinion. In this part, to me, although Will wanted to come off apologetic, he at the same time he didn't seem to want, in his own words, to feel shameful, and he didn't want to feel like a piece of shit. He said. Well, to that, James, in the book of James in the Bible, said in the 4th chapter of his book that if you are seeking reconciliation from God, that you should, he says in that 8th verse, cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. So James puts the onus on the person who has sinned against God for them to cleanse their hands, not to cleanse someone else's hands, but to cleanse their hands means that they are to stop the activity that they do that is causing the harm, that's causing the bleeding in the relationship that they have with their brother, that's causing hurt. Stop the action, stop the activity. He says also to purify your hearts. You have to, change your heart, your attitude, your mind. That's why Jesus started off with, there you remember that you've done something. So in other words, you wouldn't even be in the right heart and mind to even worship God when he is the God that you can't visibly see, but yet you are doing wrong to your brother or sister whom you see every day. Then also he says to lament and to mourn and to weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Very interesting, because what he shows here is that we are to embrace a feeling of mourning, of grieving, that we shouldn't be laughing. This is not something, Will try to go on even after that moment and celebrate by receiving an accolade, when that was a moment where he should have apologized to everyone as well as Chris first in that moment. But what he tried to do is he tried to move forward in celebrating when his celebration should have been turned into mourning. His joy should have been turned into gloom, as James says. And then the last part James said that I have for you, is to humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. Well, one thing that, I can say that Will does look humble, although he wrestled with this idea of embracing the shame and the remorse, or feeling like a piece of shit, as he puts it. But it is important for one to humble themselves. In other words, humility is the attitude that one must employ if they are even going to be apologetic, or even if they are going to acknowledge what it is that they did wrong. And humility is the attitude that causes us to obey what God would want us to do in a moment as such. The word he used in the Greek for double-minded in this passage is a person who is split half, vacillating, like a spiritual schizophrenic. As it may be coined in the New Testament, it is to have a divided interest, namely between God and the world. So if a person is double-minded in their attitude towards the one that whom they are apologizing to, it's not going to come off sincere. If they're thinking about their career, if they're thinking about how they look, if they're thinking about what other people are going to say, if they don't want to look like a fool, if they don't want to feel like a piece of shit, then they're going to come off to many as not being sincere. And this is the reason why James says that we should not be double-minded. We should not have two different agendas when we're going to our brother or sister to apologize for something that we have done. Well, that's my time, and I hope you guys got something out of this, that it's very important. Know that an authentic apology requires humility. It requires one to acknowledge and to remember what it is that they did wrong. And it requires the obedience to what their conscience is telling, what the Spirit of God is telling them, to go and get it right before you try to proceed on with life and try to celebrate life and try to live life happily. How could you live happy when your brother or sister is hurting? It shows the heart that Christ has and God has for his people. Jesus says, what you've done to the least of my little one, you've done it unto me. How could you go on and celebrate and be happy while your brother over here is destitute or hurting or is without? We ought to be merciful to one another, as he said, and then we will be shown mercy. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. These principles are so important for us as humanity. This is his message to mankind. So hopefully you got something out of this. I enjoyed this time. I enjoyed this moment. This is my first time doing a reaction video. Let me know in the comment section, what do you think about it? What is your idea of an apology? What do you think is an authentic apology? Do you think that Will's apology was authentic or not? What do you think about the scriptures that were referenced today? Do you agree with Jesus's perspective on an apology? So chime in. Let me know your thoughts. If you like this video, like it. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe, hit the notification bell, and also look into my Patreon, become a part of my virtual community here at Diggin In The Word. Check the link that is down in the description box. But with that said, until next time, keep digging in the Word. God bless. Take care. Love you.